Your Chinese is really good. Do you want to say something in Chinese for the audience too?
Sure. 大家你好. We can do the rest of this interview in Mandarin. I'm okay.
No, I don't want to. It's been super awesome getting to know you. Maybe we can give some context about how we met through Instagram, and then you could give some context around like who you are, where you're located, your connection to Singapore.
Yeah, you followed me on Instagram and then saw you liked a bunch of my photos, and I was like, okay, let me just check this person's profile out. And then I saw that you were also an American expat who was in Singapore. And so I clicked on I think it was your Medium first, so that was what you had linked on Instagram. And I read a couple of the articles. I was like, wow, this is super relatable. It's like you were originally from tech, you felt kind of burnt out, you moved to Singapore to try something new. And that was really relatable for me because I was kind of in finance for a couple of years, and I felt kind of burnt out before I switched to tech. Messaged you on Instagram about that, and I think we just kind of took it from there.
I think I found out about you because I was at dinner with a few of my friends, and then one of my friends, Tracy, who's from San Francisco, she was like, oh, you should follow this guy. He eats at the restaurants in Singapore. I love his Instagram. And then she showed me your Instagram. And I was like, followed. We're friends. How crazy is the internet? So I have a few questions I wanted you to answer because I know you are an awesome foodie and you're very well versed in the food space in general and in Singapore. Give us some context around your connection to Singapore, how you started your food journey.
I joined my tech company in August of 2019. And so they assigned me to Singapore to do a rotation in Asia for a year. And so the first 6 months was a lot of just using Singapore as a hub. So I would do projects with clients in other cities like Hangzhou, Tokyo, Bangkok, Taiwan, Sydney. And Singapore was just kind of a stopping ground in between projects. So I'd only be there for a couple of days at a time. But then in March, a lot of the borders started closing because of COVID. And so I basically just had to choose a city that I was just going to work remotely from for the rest of my project in Asia. I had really good experiences in Singapore. So I was and also the lack of language barrier. I speak Mandarin and English. So I was okay, I'll just choose Singapore. At the end of March, I got into Singapore right before the borders closed. And yeah, I spent 9 more months in Singapore, so until the end of 2020 there.
For both of us, Singapore, really does have a special place in both of our hearts.
Absolutely.
What does Singapore mean to you? Why do you feel such a strong connection to this country? And I know you are most likely going to be coming back and visiting or living here again.
I mean, I traveled to a lot of cities for either for work or vacation, and every city is special in its own right. But I'd say that Singapore is the first place internationally that's really felt like a home away from home. And I think that it's a nice tourist city, but when you actually live in Singapore and you realize how convenient everything is and how comfortable it is, a lot of the luxuries that Singaporeans have that locals take for granted, but expats really appreciate, the safety, cleanliness, I guess the kindness of strangers. It's just a lot of little things about Singapore that when you live there, you're just wow, this is amazing. Especially last year, in a global pandemic when other countries were having a lot of lockdowns, with us being from the US and seeing the situation that unfolded in the US last year with a lot of rioting, just being in Singapore was such a contrast, and it was something that I was really grateful for.
No, I agree with you too. I think during a pandemic, that's when true leadership kind of shows. Singapore, New Zealand, and even Vietnam and Taiwan did really well.
Taiwan especially, yeah. Once COVID spread, it got shut down very quickly. Whereas now in the US and Europe, you're still seeing the after effects.
Even Taiwan and Singapore, when there was just a few cases, they already started with their protocol,
exactly,
locking things down.
Part of it is also just because of SARS. A lot of these Asian countries were very prepared. They sort of knew what they had messed up last time, and they learned from it, which I think is another reason you see such decisive response from the Southeast Asian countries.
Back to food. Yes, we know that you've eaten around here in Singapore a lot. You go to Michelin star restaurants as well as more local restaurants. What has been your favorite Michelin star restaurant here in Singapore? Describe more around the environment, the plating, the type of food, just the general ambiance.
So there's probably a couple that I would like to single out here. Maybe I'd say 3 in particular. Odette, which is a modern French restaurant that has 3 Michelin stars. Meta, which is a modern Korean restaurant, and Labyrinth, which is a modern Singaporean restaurant. And with all of these 3 restaurants, they're really good at telling a story through the menu. I'd say that when you go, one of the big differences when you go to a fine dining restaurant versus a regular restaurant is that with a fine dining restaurant, it's not just about the food, but it's about the overall experience. It's about the moment you walk into the door. It's about the story they tell with their arrangement of courses. And so with these restaurants, I would say that obviously the service, the hospitality is really incredible, but they also craft the menu really, really well. So it's not just the dishes. It's not just a disparate collection of tasty dishes. It's really just from start to finish, there's a flow to the menu. And so I think of those, I think Odette does a really, really great job of that. They start off kind of light, and then they sort of build up, and the main is always something really amazing. I'd say that not just fine dining restaurants, like a lot of restaurants in Singapore just use like really high quality ingredients from other parts of the world. But I'd say Odette in particular, they kind of like source from, they sort of source like from really high quality suppliers from really like every continent.
If you don't mind sharing the price point for like each restaurant.
For Odette, they've been increasing their prices like with the more accolades they've gotten. It's just like a pretty standard. So like for Odette, I think the lunch is around maybe 250 Sing dollars plus the last time I checked, and dinner is around $100 more than that. So dinner is around like 360 plus. For Meta, I think the lunch is somewhere in the mid 100s and dinner is like the mid 200s. Labyrinth is like some like mid 100s, mid 200s as well. I think they're all generally around 7 or 8 courses.
This is a really random side tangent. This was not at a Michelin star restaurant, by the way. This is just at some like random Japanese restaurant. Me and my friend, we crashed this tasting like on, and then we're like,
I remember seeing your story on that.
Yeah, I was so embarrassed because I was like, why do they all get these like interesting plates and we have like rice? I was just like, this is not fair. And then we later found out that they had paid a premium and made huge reservations, like, you know, in advance. The Cathay building or something. I forgot what it's called, but I was so mortified afterwards because I was like, oh my god.
Why are they treating us like this?
Yeah, I was like really, I was like, they're not being so nice. And then I told my friend, I was like, let's just sit on this side. And then they're like, okay, just come in, I guess. What would be your favorite non-Michelin star restaurants?
Budget-friendly restaurant?
Budget-friendly, yeah. And it doesn't have to be Singaporean food. It can just be like a restaurant.
Okay, I'll say one of the more unique ones. So like one of the restaurants that I found that there's really like nothing else like this in Singapore is Cafe Utu. And so it's near Keong Saik Road. And it's like one of the really unique things about it. It's an African themed cafe. It's like a 3-story house. And like they're decorated with like art on the different floors. And the dinner is like really authentic, like African food. Like the brunch is a little bit more westernized, but they're pretty popular in that area. And I haven't seen anything else quite like them in Singapore. So I think that it's a unique place. Definitely have to go early for that place. Like I once showed up at like 11 a.m. on a Thursday morning. I was like, yeah, like, and then there was like a 1-hour wait. I was like, what? This is like a Thursday morning.
Did you wait?
So I did not queue that day, but I went back like right when they opened on another day, and I was able to get in on the first seating. But I'd say that like if you show up after they open, you're at risk of missing the first seating and then having to wait like half an hour to an hour. Okay. But I would say it's also like I went for a brunch, which is like much more westernized. It's just like there's like eggs Benedict and like omelets and stuff like that. Hotcakes, but like if you go for dinner, I'd say that's probably like a much more authentic experience.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. And then is there another non-Michelin, like Singaporean restaurant you would recommend?
Yeah, so it would be a Zijar place called KEK Seafood near Alexandria. The setting is like it's not really a hawker. It's also, I guess like it's more like a kopitiam, but it's like the service there is like really amazing, and like the aunties and uncles, they treat you like your family. I remember the time I went there, like we brought like an outside cake that one of our, like my friends and I, we brought like an outside cake that one of our friends had gifted us, and like we were like felt a little bit awkward about like bringing outside food into like to that place. Then they came up and they were like, oh, do you want us to like refrigerate your cake for you? And we were like, oh yeah, thanks. So like they took it into the fridge, right? And then like when they brought it back at the end of the meal, they had like cut it up for us. They had given us utensils and serving plates. I was just like what? That's okay. And they're just like really amazing service. It feels like family. You're dining with family friends, and they're fun twists on a couple of dishes. I think they have like a coffee pork ribs or something like that, which is like really good, a little bit more modern as well.
I love supporting like more of these like family ran businesses.
Probably among foodies, the most popular is Zijar plates in Singapore.
Thank you for your recommendation. When I first met you, some of my burning questions were, do you like speaking to the chefs, like when you're eating at these like Michelin star restaurants? And then also like, what is it like dining? Like, do you dine alone? Do you dine with friends?
The first time, like I guess like when I started fine dining, which is actually not that long ago, it was like right when I came to Asia, because like I had like watched a Netflix series called Chef's Table, and that show kind of like showed me that like fine dining was like kind of like an art form, and it was like the food is like really exploratory. And so like that's kind of when I started it. And in the beginning it was like kind of awkward talking to chefs, because I was just like, oh, I don't even know if like they want us. Like somehow in my mind, like a chef is just like a really busy individual who just like likes to be tucked away in the kitchen, and they don't like to be brought out of like their space. I don't know where I got that opinion from. Maybe it was like from watching Gordon Ramsay or something, and just like seeing him yell at like other people. But that was the impression I had. But that was like honestly, for most of my experience so far, that couldn't be further from the truth. I'd say that like chefs don't really have a lot of opportunities to interact with their diners because they're in the kitchen so much. And so like whenever they have these opportunities to like talk to diners, they're really grateful. Like when you like not only say when you say good things about their food, when you give them kind of like feedback and critique on things that like you don't like as much, and they're just like really grateful for like these small opportunities that they get. And so like I think after I started realizing that like the chefs like actually really want to hear back from diners, I started doing it a lot more. Some of them are really interesting characters as well, and so like I've become like actually friends with like a fair number of chefs.
I think that's awesome. You know what's funny? I have that mentality too, that like chefs don't want to be bothered.
Some of them don't. Some of them don't.
Yeah, but I love that you like actually interact with the chefs. You talk to them. Also, do you dine alone or do you dine with friends? Like, how has that been for you?
My preference for fine dining is to dine with friends. It's like it's always nice like when you have it's typically like a 2+ hour meal, so it's like nice to have someone to talk to, and also just like to have sometimes with some dishes like I might like it or I might not like it, but like I'm curious about like what someone else's thoughts are. And so it's like when you dine with a friend, like it's kind of like when you like discuss art with a friend, like you sometimes see different things in it, right? And so yeah, so like it's always like nice to dine with friends so I could have a separate opinion. That being said, I think given the frequency that I was dining out at, and like kind of like some of the restaurants were kind of like really high and expensive, it was like difficult to find friends to dine with like every single day or like on a regular basis. And so I'd say that probably like more than 50, like maybe 2/3 of the time I was dining alone, and about 1/3 of the time was with friends. And like with the 2/3 of the time that I was dining alone, I'd say that like it's a lot of the focus is kind of like on the food as well. So like I don't really mind just like not talking and just like tasting.
I think your whole experience has been so cool in Singapore, and I'm definitely gonna link it in my video, and then I'll have it like up here as well. Do you have any last words that you want to mention about Singapore in general, or about like the food scene in Singapore?
So I guess like about the food scene in Singapore, it's just like so international. It's crazy how international it is. There's like, you can find restaurants of like really any sort of cuisine, and you can find a lot of them. And like, because like Singapore tends to import the produce from overseas because like not so many things are grown locally, like the quality of the produce is like really what you would find in Europe or the US or Japan. And so, and it's not just about the restaurants as well. It's like going to cold storage or going to the Provador. It's like I find like jamon iberico from Spain every other week, like that's imported every other week. And then you can find like high quality fruits from Korea and Japan. It's just like the grocery stores are the most international I've ever seen. The restaurants are like super international as well. I'd say that like on the food scene, it's just so diverse, and that like the street food is strong, the fine dining food is strong, the fine dining scene is strong, like everything in the middle, like a lot of international options, but also a lot of local options.
I think I hear this a lot, that like we are spoilt for choice here in Singapore when it comes to the food scene.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that like on Singapore as a whole, I think like the spoil theme is like also like very true. I think that it's honestly like when you think of like places that you'd want to like settle down, I think Singapore really checks off all the boxes. It's just like the education system is amazing. The ability to travel from Singapore because of the geographic location is amazing. The safety is amazing. The cleanliness is amazing. It's really just like perfect. So I think that like definitely I can see myself moving back to Singapore in the future. And even if I don't, it's like a place that I'm probably going to visit at least once every year.
Hopefully you can visit when I'm here.
I will try, or we can always meet up back in the US. But yeah. I think that once Singapore opens their borders, I'll be on like the first flight back.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, thanks, Jon. Realize I need to go out and explore. I'm actually going to take the recommendations and go to the African restaurant, and then the other one.
KEK.
KK.
King and Key. Yeah.
So I'll go to that one. I don't think I'm going to go to any Michelin star restaurants unless it's like my farewell gift to myself in Singapore. I'm kidding. Okay. Bye, Jon. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.